morning. This lecture video is going to look at the enteric nervous system and how we supply nervous stimulation to our digestive system in order for everything to run the way it needs to. So your digestive system is going to get started or be stimulated by things even before you actually eat. So as soon as you see food, smell food, taste food, the thought of food, if your endocrine system is sending messages that you're hungry, all of these different things are going to stimulate neurons to start the digestive process even before you actually put anything into your mouth. So like if you're smelling something that tastes delicious, for instance, it will stimulate your salivary glands to start producing more saliva, like getting ready for you to actually eat something. So any sight, smell, taste, the thought of food, this is going to stimulate sensory receptors, and they will send impulses along sensory neurons then of the cranial nerves to get the processes of digestion starting. Motor neurons are also involved in this process because they will be involved in helping you chew, because that's more of a muscular type of activity. As soon as food enters your mouth, it's detected by receptors that send impulses along the sensory neurons of the cranial nerves. And without these nerves, not only would your food be without taste, it'd be, bland, but you would also be unable to either feel the food within the structures of your mouth, and you would be unable to avoid biting yourself as you chew. So these are actions that are going to be enabled by the motor branches of those cranial nerves. So the sensory ones and the motor ones work together. Your digestive system, however, has an intrinsic innervation of it. And what this basically means is sometimes this is called like the third nervous system. Sometimes scientists refer to it as your second brain, because this is going to be a system that actually can function within the other systems of the nervous system, or it also functions on its own. So, and this is called the enteric nervous system. It runs from the esophagus to the anus. It's going to be grouped into two plexuses, the myenteric plexus of the muscularis layer, and its main job is going to be motility, and then the submucosal plexus in the submucosal layer, and its main job is going to be to secrete or promote secretions of food and then reacting to food. And this system is going to work close together with the parasympathetic nervous system. It will be stimulated by the parasympathetic nervous system, but it will also be shut down then by the sympathetic nervous system. So here's a diagram, again, going back to one of the diagrams we saw in the other lecture video that kind of shows how this will work. So if we go down to our autonomic nervous system, it's divided into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So this is going to be the fight or flight response, and this one is often called the rest and digesting system. So when one of these is activated, the other one's kind of shut down. And then there's this third, which is the enteric nervous system, which is what we're talking about now. Your enteric nervous system is divided into the myenteric plexus and then the submucosal plexus. So if we look back to this diagram that I showed in another lecture video, that's kind of going to show here the layers of tissue that are found within the digestive organs. So here's the mucosal layer. Remember, this is the lumen, so this is where food is going to be actively traveling through. This is the submucosal layer, the layer in between the muscularis externa, which is made of a circular muscular layer as well as a longitudinal muscular layer. And then on top is the serosa, which would include your peritoneum. So if we look at these tissue layers that's found within the GI tract, we can see which myenteric plexus and the submucosal plexus are going to stimulate each one. So if we're looking at the myenteric system here, it's going to be located within the longitudinal and circular muscular layers of the muscularis externa. And so you're going to end up with this bunch of neurons here. So we'll draw these neurons. And not only are the neurons connected then obviously to each other, but they form this network here. So it's also going to be connected to the muscular layers that exist, both the circular and the longitudinal layer. And that makes sense because this job is motility, right? That's what this network is going to do. That's going to be its job. So this is going to be where the myenteric plexus exists. So here's the submucosal plexus then. It's going to be located in the submucosal layer. So that makes a lot of sense, right? Submucosal, submucosal. Again, even with the myenteric, think about M, muscularis externa. It's going to innervate that particular layer of our digestive tissues. And the submucosal plexus is going to stimulate secretions. It's responsible for regulating digestive secretion. It's also going to react to the presence of food and play a role in motility along with that myenteric plexus. And then finally, it's going to regulate blood flow and absorption. So those are the two subdivisions of the enteric nervous system, which is going to innervate our digestive system. So how does the system actually work? Well, both the myenteric and the submucosal plexuses are made up of both ascending and descending neurons. Now, the ascending neurons are going to release excitatory neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine and SP, which will cause contractions to occur. Descending neurons are going to release inhibitory neurotransmitters like nitric oxide and VIP, which will cause relaxation to occur. And what happens is that the circular and the longitudinal layers are going to be doing opposite activities, which will then propel the food through the GI tract. So if the circular muscular layer is contracting, the longitudinal one is going to be relaxing, and vice versa. The longitudinal one is contracting, the circular one is going to be relaxing. And this is all going to be driven then by the pressure, not only physical pressure of the food moving through the digestive tract, but also chemical receptors are going to stimulate these responses too. So as the bolus or the clump of food moves through the tract, there are going to be things happening behind it and things happening in front of it in order to move it along through the tract. So as the bolus is traveling through, the ascending neurons are going to stimulate contractions of the circular layer of muscles, and the descending neurons will relax the longitudinal ones. So that will be happening behind the bolus. So circular will be contracted, descending neurons will relax the longitudinal. In front of the bolus, the ascending neurons will contract the longitudinal muscles, and the descending neurons will relax the circular muscles. And this alternating pattern then of circular and longitudinal contraction and relaxation is going to move the food all the way through the digestive tract. So behind the bolus are two activities of the muscles. Circular is contracted, longitudinal is relaxed. In front of the bolus, those circular muscles will relax and the longitudinal ones will then contract. Your digestive system is also going to be stimulated by the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And so your sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight system. So this is going to be activated in terms of emergency. And when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, the communication with the enteric system is to slow down and stop. So once the sympathetic nervous system gets put into place, it will communicate with the enteric system to slow down peristalsis, slow down blood flow, slow down absorption, slow down secretion. We don't need to be digesting things. We need to divert all of our resources to our muscles in order to generate whatever response we need in the emergency. The parasympathetic system is going to communicate with the enteric system to cause it to stimulate or increase digestive activity. Sometimes the parasympathetic is called the rest and digest system, and that's why it's going to increase peristalsis, increase blood flow, increase absorption, and increase secretion. So digestion is going to be very active when the parasympathetic nervous system innervates the enteric system. So the enteric system works kind of on its own, like I mentioned, causing the contractions of those different muscles, but it also is going to communicate with the sympathetic and the parasympathetic as well. So that's kind of the nervous system control of the digestive system.